What is angular.js? Scope is an object injected in the application, but it is not only the object. It is more than the object without represent data and methods. Scope is the main thing or key to bind application data and connect model to the view. Scope handles the binding part between HTML view and JavaScript. Here you can look the code. Here you can see link that the ajax.google API is. Then you can see the first name equal the John, then see result. There is a considerable difference between the static documents and dynamic applications. Dynamic applications typically use a library and a framework that supports creating web apps. While the library contains a number of functions used to perform certain operators, framework automatically takes the data and calls the functions when needed. However, AngularJS creates new HTML constructs that eventually eliminates this mismatch effectively. It creates new syntax with the help of directives. Here is the demo. This example you can show try to change the names and see first name and last name. That is the example. Modules. A module can be defined as a container that consists of various application parts. The module is a set of functions defined in a JavaScript file. Module divides an application into small and reusable components. Directives. Directives indicate the compiler to associate a behavior to the DOM element or modify it. AngularJS contains several derivatives such as ngApp, ngController, ngView, ngIf, etc. Expressions. AngularJS expressions are expressed with second bracket with indicate a data binding in HTML. These expressions can be added into the HTML templates. Data binding is data synchronization between view and data model. We have seen the previous article. AngularJS application have data model, which is collection of data for the application of view, and view is our HTML of which display data. Set up AngularJS development environment. Environment for Angular development using the Angular CLI tool. It includes information and prerequisites: installing the CLI, creating an initial workspace and starter app. In order to set up a development environment for AngularJS, it lets you use HTML as template language and lets you extend HTML's syntax to express applications components clearly and succinctly. AngularJS data binding and dependency injection eliminate much for the code of the code you would otherwise have to write, and it all happens within the browser, making it an ideal partner with any server technology. AngularJS extends HTML attributes with directives and binds data to HTML with expressions. In this chapter, we will discuss the environment setup required for Angular. To install Angular, we require the following: Node.js, npm, Angular CLI, Node.js. To check if Node.js is installed on our system, type Node v in the terminal. This will help you see the version of Node.js currently installed on your system. If it does not print anything, install Node.js on your system. To install Node.js of Node.js and install the package based on your OS. Based on your OS, install the required package. Once Node.js is installed, npm will also get installed along with it. To check if npm is installed or based on your OS, based on your OS or not, type npm v in the terminal. It should display the version of npm. What is Atom AngularJS? Controllers, services, factories, filters, directives, modules, routes. Environment configuration in AngularJS. Using AngularJS for a simple dashboard consuming in API from a different server. To assign the IDA in AngularJS to a certain value, I currently use app.constant in app.js file. Angular. The Angular CLI and Angular apps depend on features and functionality provided by libraries libraries that are available as npm packages. AngularJS modules. AngularJS application without a module and then understand the need of having modules in your application. In AngularJS modules, generally we will create modules by using Angular module function and the syntax of using Angular modules in applications. Specifically creating an AngularJS module called SimpleApp. This application module can contain other modules, controllers, filters, etc. Let's create an example. See the doc TOCTYPR and look at the first name plus last name. AngularJS component. In AngularJS, a component is a special kind of directive that uses a simpler configuration which is suitable for a component-based application structure. This makes it easier to write an app in the way that's similar to using web components or using the new Angular's style of application architecture. Advantages of components. Simpler configuration than plain directives. Promote hand defaults and best practice. Optimized for component-based architecture. Writing component directives will make it easier to upgrade to Angular when not to your components. For directives that need to perform actions in compile and pre-link functions because they are not available. When you need advanced directive definition options like priority, terminal, multi-element. When you want to directive that is triggered by an attribute or CSS class rather than an element. So here you can see another demo. Here is the doc type HTML and link, that is ajax.google types. Then see quantity on the cost 5, then quantity integer cost. Angular.js expression. Use filter within the Angular.js expression to format and filter data before displaying it. The ng-init directive A2 is used to declare AngularJS application variables of any data type. JavaScript expression generates type error and reference error when trying to evaluate undefined properties, whereas AngularJS expression does not generate my expression. An expression that starts with double colon is considered as a one-time expression is very useful feature of AngularJS. It binds the data to the HTML. AngularJS expressions are mostly same as JavaScript expressions, and they can have literals, operators, and variables. Data binding. Data binding is in Angular apps is the automatic synchronization of data between the model and view components. Data binding in Angular apps is this automatic synchronization of data between the model and view components. When data in the model changes, the view reflects the change, and when data in the view changes, the model is updated as well. Data comes from database in JSON format. Through data binding using AngularJS, it automatically set two input boxes. In input box jQuery, UI the date picker and attached. Now look at the code. This example you can observe about controller equal to my control and first name is John and last name is Doe. Data binding in angular.js templates. Angular.js templates work differently. First, the template is compiled on the browser. The compilation step produces a live view. Any changes to the view are immediately reflected in the model, and any changes in the model are passed to the view. The model is the single source of truth for the application state, greatly simplifying the programming. For the developer, you can think of the view as simply an instant projection of your model. Understanding controller. In AngularJS, a controller is defined by a JavaScript constructor function that is used to augment the AngularJS scope. Controllers can be attached to the DOM in different ways. For each of them, AngularJS will instantiate a new controller object using the specified controller's constructor function. The ngController directive. A new child scope will be created and made available as an injectable parameter to the controller's instructor function is escape. A route controller is a route definition. The controller of a regular directive or a component directive. If the controller has been attached using the controller as syntax, then the controller instance will be assigned to a property on the scope. Look at this demo. In AngularJS, a controller is defined by a JavaScript In AngularJS, a controller is defined by a JavaScript constructor function that is used to augment the AngularJS scope. A controller in AngularJS is used to augment the Angular scope, and this defined by a JavaScript constructor function. A controller is attached to the DOM by using the ngController directive. Once a controller is attached, Angular by using the specified controller's constructor function will instance a new controller object. What are scopes? What are scopes? Scopes provide APIs to observe model mutations. Scopes provide APIs to propagate any model changes through the system into the view from outside of the angular.js realm. The properties and methods attached to root scope will be available to all the controllers. Scopes provide APIs apply to propagate any model changes through the system into the view from outside of the Angular.js realm. Let's see the code. You can see input ng model equal to name, then var app equal to angular.module and scope.name equal to John Doe. Scopes can be nested to limit access to the properties of application components while providing access to shared model properties. Nested scopes are either child scopes or isolate scopes. A child scope inherits properties from its parent scope. An isolate scope does not see isolated scopes. For more information. What is filters? Filters format the value of an expression for display to the user. They can be used in view templates, controllers or services. AngularJS comes with a collection of built-in filters, but it is easy to define your own as all. When filters are executed in templates, filters are only executed when their inputs have changed. This is more performant than executing a filter on each digest as in the case with expressions. In general, this applies only to filters that take primitive values as inputs. Filters that receive objects as input are executed on each digest, as it would be too costly to track if the inputs have changed. Let's create another example. First C controller equal to person control, then last name and uppercase, where first name is John and last Doe. What is service? AngularJS also allows you to create custom service for your application. AngularJS supports the concept of separation of concerns using services architecture. Angular services are singleton objects that carry out some sort of task. We also use AngularJS services to organize and share code across the application. Providers are the only service you can pass into your configure function. Provides are used when you want to provide module-wide configuration for your service object before making it available. It returns value by using get function. What is routing in AngularJS? Routing is the core feature of AngularJS. This feature helps in building a single page application with multiple views where all views are simple HTML files. We use routing the load different views or the navigate to the different part of the application without loading an entire page again. Routing helps us divide our application in logical views and bind them with different controllers. In SPA application, different HTML files and we use routing to load different part of application, and it's help to divide application logically and make it manageable. In other words, routing helps us to divide our application in logical views and bind them with different controllers. Let's see the demo. Introduction to NG route model. This model provides routing in angular.js application and also provides deep linking services and derivatives. To achieve routing in angular.js, we need to include the library file of ngroute, component of ngroute module. There are four main components of ngroute module. ngview. ngview is directive and creates new scope. It is used to load HTML templates. Route provider. It is used to configure route. It is used to make deep linking URLs between controllers and view. Route washes location URL and tries to map the path to an existing route defined by route provider. Component routes. A component is a special kind of directive that uses simpler configuration which is suitable for a component-based application structure. It is recommended to develop AngularJS applications as a hierarchy of components. All component router applications must contain a top-level routing component. Templates and controllers can directly access the mutate scope variables from parent controllers. Components to the rescue. Since this combination is such a common and recurring pattern, AngularJS provides as an easy and concise way to combine them together into reusable and isolated entities known as components. Additionally, AngularJS will create a so-called isolate scope for each instance of our component, which means no prototypal inheritance and no risks of our component affecting other parts of the application or vice versa. What is Angular HTTP? The HTTP API is based on the deferred or promise APIs exposed by the queue service, which is an implementation of promise interface. Based on Chris Qualls' queue approach, which is a standardized way of dealing with uh, asynchronous calls in JavaScript. HTTP can be treated somewhat equivalent or to jQuery Ajax. The HTTP function is a promise object, then method to register callbacks, and these callbacks will receive a single argument, an object representing the response, so that it can be used to send GET request. AngularJS automatically injects scope parameter at runtime. The http.get method returns http promise, which includes methods like success because for transporting the data. JSON is an Amazon method, and also it is straightforward and effortless to use within AngularJS, JavaScript, etc. Now, see create an example. Here you can show heading is my welcome, then var app equal to angular.module Then scope dot my welcome equal to response dot data method. There are lots of methods that can be used to call HTTP service. This is also shortcut methods to call HTTP service. What is Angular table? Tables are one of the common elements used in HTML when working with web pages. Tables in HTML are designed using the HTML tag. Table tag. This is the main tag used for displaying the table. TR. This tag is used for segregating the rows within the table. TD. This tag is used for displaying the actual table data. TS. This is used for the table header data. Using the above available HTML tags along with angular.js, we can make it easier to populate table data. In short, the ngRepeat directive is used to fill the in table data. AngularJS SQL. AngularJS is perfect for displaying data from a database. Very useful for developers who are working on projects with MVC. JSON supports the SQL Server. SQL is designed to make integration between the relational database models and the modern single-page JavaScript apps easier than ever. Significant SQL database development and significant Angular client development. Develop an Angular application using MySQL instead of the old established LAMP stack. MySQL database with the Express.js framework to power the backend, and Angular JS for the client. The application will create a simple timeline and in which the user can add and edit events with a simple CRUD API. What is DOM in AngularJS? DOM manipulation is a dedicated function. This function will be called when appropriate, but all DOM interaction will be in one place, which make it easier to review. Expose that function as a controller method is called it from derivatives function. This ensures that DOM will be in the desired state and also decouples standalone controller installation from DOM manipulation. DOM in AngularJS acts as an API for JavaScript. A programmer can navigate documents structure with DOM elements whenever a web page is loaded. The browser creates a document model object for the page. Let's look at the demo. See the button ng disabled equal to my switch and click me. Why DOM is used? A programmer can use DOM in AngularJS for the following purpose. Documents are built using DOM elements. A programmer can navigate documents structured with DOM elements. A programmer can add elements and content with DOM elements. Programmer can modify elements and content with DOM elements. Derivatives for AngularJS HTML DOM. Various derivatives to bind the application data to the attributes of DOM elements. Some of them are ng disabled, ng height, ng click, ng show, ng disabled. ng disabled for disabling a given control. Attributes of HTML elements can be displayed using ng disabled derivative it by adding it to an HTML button and pass it to model. So you can look another example. This example you can see paragraph that is ng show equal to true and I am visible and ng show equal to false I may not visible. ng show and ng hide directive. AngularJS view is a content which is displayed to the user. According to a user request, the view of an application is displayed to the user. The ng-click directive might suspect. The ng-click directive might suspect is a directive containing an expression for Angular to evaluate against the current controller scope when the user clicks the button and element will disappear. ng button is preferable to use. Before the completion for the AngularJS, a pattern is temporarily displayed in the browser. ngbind make the binding invisible for the user when the page is loading. The ngbind is considered as an element attribute. AngularJS animations. Animations between DOM manipulations. Animations before and after an element is added to or removed for the DOM. After an element changes and before and after an element is moved in the DOM. These events are the moments when we might add animations. It allows us to use animations within AngularJS derivatives DOM manipulation. Animation is a JavaScript callback animation. Following the naming conventions set in place by AngularJS or with JavaScript code defined as a factory. Look at the demo. This demo you can see transition is all linear 0.5 second, height is 100 pixel and width is 10 percentage. You can also see background color is transparent, top 2000 pixel and left 2000 pixel. How to use ng-animate in AngularJS. To provide animation effect to HTML elements while performing events like show or hide, etc. What does an ng-animate do? The ng-animate module does not animate HTML element itself. It only adds and removes some predefined classes to make animations. When ng-animate notice certain events, look, height, or show of an HTML element. Following is a list of derivatives and in AngularJS who add or remove classes: ng-show, ng-height, ng-class, ng-view, ng-include, ng-repeat, ng-if, ng-switch. Here HTML is transformed to given an illusion of motion using ng-animate module that gives us a combined effect of JavaScript and CSS. It uses TypeScript by default for creating logics and methods for a class, but the browser does not know TypeScript. Here back comes in picture. Webpack is used to compile this TypeScript file in JavaScript. In addition, Angular is well suited for building small to large scale applications from scratch. Angular CLI stands for Command Line Interface, the name suggests. Angular CLI creates the ideal Angular environment for Angular app. It includes all the importing, packaging, browse links, use Webpack all by itself. But there is no need for to know what is a Webpack or how it works, because all of the Webpack configuration is completely done by Angular CLI. Programming with AngularJS. Angular derivatives and to create Angular components and services to develop applications based on the model view controller architecture. You will learn to use HTML templates to define views and to connect views with code using output. Two-way event and property bindings. The course reviews the benefits and challenges of single-page applications and how to overcome those challenges using the Angular router. The course also covers everything you need to know about TypeScript, a programming language based on JavaScript that is used to create Angular. It includes an approach to data binding that allows web apps to run more efficiently through the use of the scope object that dynamically updates to the user interface without relying on the server backend. It could have been a mere dream to compare this to the great organization of building or manipulating the DOM elements based on the user declarations. AngularJS is an open source project created and maintained by Google. To use AngularJS is your ASP.NET web applications. First, download it from here and add it as a script tag on the web page. In this article, I will introduce you to AngularJS and provide a few sample codes which will allow you to understand it better. AngularJS derivatives. In AngularJS, derivatives are used to declarative syntax which will be processed by the compiler on the response to the browser, resulting in the specific behavior changes to the DOM elements, etc. Basically, this is a way in angular.js for extending the HTML declarations. There are many inbuilt directives that AngularJS provides, and the following are few among them. Looking at web server to browser communication terms, the DOM and renders the web page by reading each node and drawing the appropriate pixels in the browsing window. As you learn later, JavaScript, jQuery, and AngularJS enable you to interact directly with the DOM. Reading each of the objects, changing those objects, and even removing and adding objects controller, it is the place where the application behavior are defined. The scope will get injected into each controller view. View is nothing but the client HTML is to which the behaviors and data are applied.